Competitive cheerleading. It's more than just cheering on the sidelines for another team. It's a contact sport that requires athletes to perform at a high level. The athletes at Champion Cheer Athletics, also known as CCA Panthers, are dedicated to this sport. The gym is in Mississauga, and many athletes commute to get here. You won't see much cheering or chanting at this gym. Instead, you'll see stunting, dancing, tumbling, and jumping. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Those 4 main components require strength, precision, flexibility, and synchronization. They train 6 to 10 hours a week. At every practice, they train as if they're performing, which leaves some of them exhausted.
You've seen, obviously, what they do in a practice, and they go a hardcore 2 hours solid where they're jumping, they're tumbling, they're stunting. They get very minimal breaks. It's very physically demanding, and if you're not on top of it with all the choreography that goes into it, you get lost in a second.
Unlike most team sports, cheerleading season is year-round. They train twice a week, every week, for 12 months, all for a 2.5-minute routine that they perform at about 6 competitions a year. CCA competes in the States every year and travels internationally every other year. They have gone undefeated at every international competition. Some people don't see cheerleading as a sport, but Rebecca Dawes thinks differently.
These girls are athletes. They're incredibly strong, they're incredibly flexible. They have to incorporate dance and movement and gymnastics and stunting, which is, no other team does this, no other team sport does this stunting the way these girls are. And these girls are lifting girls their own size. So they're strong, strong, strong girls, and they have to learn how to do it properly so that they don't injure themselves. And but yeah, when I tell my friends that my daughters are in cheerleading, they kind of make a face like, "What do you mean? Like isn't that like kind of toddlers and tiaras?" And I was like, you know what? Watch these girls.
Cheerleading can start at a young age. The junior teams are just as committed as the senior teams. The kids work just as hard in their routine. Nicole Young is 10 years old. She has been cheerleading for 3 years.
I feel happy and I'm ready to go home and do some stuff at home and involves cheerleading, like stretching.
Putting your children in cheerleading can get expensive. Costs can include uniforms, shoes, travel expenses, and competition fees. Cheerleading takes a toll on the body. The constant flipping, jumping, and pounding on the floor is hard on the cheerleaders' joints. Flying as high as 10 meters in the air can also be dangerous. But for Alyssa Allen, this is normal.
You definitely need to trust people. When I first started, I was terrified because there were these people that were throwing me in the air and I had to trust them to catch me so I didn't land on the floor, right? But I think that comes with when you get more comfortable with it. I mean, you get to know your teammates, you know that they won't let you hit the ground, as best as they can.
But sometimes, mistakes do happen, and people can fall. Cheerleading is often said to have one of the highest injury rates out of all team sports. Greer says to think twice about this.
A lot of times they're comparing them with sports that only run 3 months of the year, and so a lot of times that's not taken into consideration, and so they're just taking raw stats and saying this was the number of injuries in cheerleading versus this was the number of injuries in football. But they forget to tell you that football only runs 3 months of the season.
If athletes are properly trained with the right equipment, then injuries are less likely to happen. CCA Panthers are getting ready for their first competition of the year. They will be competing against teams from across Canada. Competitive cheerleading is quickly growing in Canada. CCA Panthers is just one of more than 50 clubs in Ontario. Each club is proving that cheerleading is not just supporting another sport, it's one of its own. This is Yasmin Jaswal for Ryerson Broadcast News.